So officially, good morning to everyone and welcome to Minds and Money 5 at 5. Bright and early for some of us based in Perth today or otherwise in Asia. Otherwise, alternatively, we're talking to a number of people from Canada and also North America joining us late in the afternoon or evening. So welcome to all of you for joining us. This is meant to be obviously our monthly episode for the Minds and Money APAC event. So it's centred around the topics for Victoria projects and opportunities. And we're very excited to have all the speakers that will be joining us today. This Minds and Money episode is part of the Minds and Money Online Global Connect event, which Minds and Money are running on the 1st to the 3rd of September in the lead up to what is a truly global event. With 100 plus mining companies involved, 400 active investors, rolling time zones and the face-to-face meetings that we'll have for that. You can obviously join that event via the mindsandmoney.com/online registration page, as we'd love to obviously have you involved with that and a lot of the keynote speakers that are part. IMARC Online, which is something that I'm part of, also has the inclusion of these 5 at 5 episodes. Investor keynote presentations include that from Eddie Hambro, who will be joining us this year, Owen Hegarty and Eddie Sugar from EAS Advisors. If you'd like more information about IMARC Online, please connect with me and let me know. For this particular episode and the series in general, I'd like to thank the Melbourne Mining Club for their continued support, represented this morning with Richard Morrow, looking all spick and span over there with his artwork and his almost matching tie. So thank you, Richard, and the Melbourne Mining Club. I know that Gavin Collery is also on the call. We also thank the government, Victorian government support for the event, represented today by Cairns from the Geological Survey of Victoria. Don't forget that after this particular episode, you can join Kerry Stevenson's virtual gold conference kicking off directly after this. That also has a number of ASX listed companies presentations and 4 keynotes. You've all noticed that you're on mute during the Q&A period. If you'd like to ask a question, please put it into the group chat and we'll be able to unmute you so you can ask the questions. We try to make it as interactive as possible. Please do turn your camera on, even if you wanted to say hello to a particular speaker, if you're involved with any of these particular projects at Fosterville South, at Stavely, or otherwise at Kirkland Lake, Fosterville, then do let us know as well. Oh, my name is Karina from Minds and Money, and I do welcome you and hope you enjoy this episode. Richard, on to you.
Thanks, Shireen, and thanks to Minds and Money for bringing together such an interesting and globally diverse panel. Melbourne Mining Club is delighted to partner with Minds and Money to bring you these 5 at 5s. You know, such great speakers, and what a topic today, mining in Victoria. And perhaps we have to thank those buyers of gold out there who recently pushed the price close to $2,000 an ounce, or 2,700 in Aussie terms. We won't be blaming our Canadian speakers today for the gold price correction overnight. There's no doubt that the spotlight is now on gold mining and exploration, despite this price volatility. The panel today is a great mix of investors and operators, here to give the audience an insight into the gold share market in general and the Victorian sector in particular. I'll be introducing everyone as we go, but first up is one of our most experienced investors in the small resources space, Melbourne-based Karina from Acorn Capital. Karina is a geologist who has worked out there in the field in the heat and the dust. Acorn would see just about every capital raising going around in the resources space. Karina, from a well-credentialed resource investor as Acorn Capital, you have a grandstand view of what is happening in the exploration sector in Australia generally. Has the level of capital raising efforts lately surprised you? And what are you seeing in terms of that money being spent in the ground? How does that look for you?
Thanks, Richard, and thanks for having me on the panel, Minds and Money. Yeah, I think the last couple of months has been a bit of a roller coaster ride for everyone in the mining space. Certainly when we entered March, early March, as the virus was unfolding and we were starting to get a sense of what the impacts were going to be, at Acorn we took a view that there were going to become a range of raisings. Certainly that was what we experienced post the GFC over a decade ago now. But we felt it was more likely to be due to stressed balance sheets. And in some cases, in the early days of late March, early April, that was the case. However, since then, we've seen a huge number of raisings, gold in particular making up the majority of those raisings. But we've also seen it across all other commodities, from potash to nickel to rare earths just the other day. And yeah, it's been a very busy 4 or 5 months for Acorn Capital. We've been flat out looking at raisings pretty much constantly since mid-March. We know that the equities for resources is up 50% since the bottom of the market in March. And we've certainly seen some COVID disruptions through either shut-in or companies being infected that has had some impact on supply of commodities into the market. But from our point of view at Acorn, I think most mining companies have actually adapted quite well to the COVID restrictions that have been imposed on them. And that has led to certainly an increase in exploration activity and drilling in the ground. However, I think that we're going to see even more of that in the coming months, because there's always a bit of a lag between raising the money and actually getting the drill rigs on the ground. But we'll certainly start to see those numbers come through, and maybe Cameron later today can give us a bit more insight on the actual on-ground activity in Victoria right now. I do think that we might start to see some cost pressures come into the market for drilling activity, either because of COVID restrictions and state borders, or because there is going to be significant demand coming through over the next 3 to 6 months.
Karina, how would you rate the local interest in the Victorian sector? Hot, cold, or somewhere in between?
I think we can all summarily say it's pretty hot. Once again, almost all of the Victorian companies who have tenure in Victoria have raised money in the last 3 or 4 months. So I think you could say that constitutes that the market's open for gold and general exploration in Victoria as well. And so I think that's going to have a real impact on the Victorian potential discovery rates, because what we know is that without drilling, without funding, you can't make discoveries. So I do think that going forward over the next 12 to 24 months, when that money gets applied into the ground, we might start to see some really significant discoveries being made in Victoria. So I think absolutely it's a very hot space, and just recently 2 IPOs have occurred.
Wow, that's right. Look, you're a geologist. You worked in the field. Have you had any chance to really sort of get into the Victorian geology, and how is the reality of what the drill bit's coming up with and greenfields exploration balancing up with the promise and the potential in Victoria?
Well, that's a good question, Richard. I have pretty much, I think I've visited most operating mines in the state recently, and obviously I studied my undergraduate in Victoria, so I had to go and kick a few rocks in Victoria as well. The reality for Victoria is there really is exploration's potential, and historically perhaps it's certainly compared to Western Australia and Queensland, and even say New South Wales has suffered over many decades from a lack of systemic and consistent exploration. And what I'm hoping to see as a result of these recent raisings is that perhaps Victoria will now have that opportunity to really get the compounding benefits of consistent and systematic exploration. I will raise a note of caution, though, that there is no guarantee of success. It's still a numbers game in that respect. Even companies like Stavely, who we'll hear from later this morning, look, that took 6 years and over $20 million before that discovery hole was made last year. What was the indicator there, I guess, was that Stavely was able to apply new ideas, new geological ideas, and new geological information, and couple that with the historic work that had previously been done, because it was a prospect that had been known about for many decades. They were able to put those things together, and then make that discovery that they made, and we'll get more information about that today. But also, a bit of luck is always good in this case. So there's a real opportunity for Victoria in the next 24 months. And I think that geological opportunity of discovery is real for Victoria.
Look, thanks very much, Karina. That's very good comments there. Look, don't go away, because we've got the Q&A coming up a little bit later. And look, if anyone has a question, please type it into the chat panel there, and we'll come to you, or we might even get Shireen to ask it for you. Thanks, Karina. Our
Thanks,
next
Richard.
is Robert Cohen from 1832 Fund Management, and joins us from Toronto. Robert, thanks for making the time to join the panel. Robert,
here.
1832 is on the register of a number of Aussie gold producers and explorers. Has Australia been a happy hunting ground for resources for investors in North America?
I think so. I mean, us in particular, we've been invested in Australia for 25, 30 years as a fund company. So we were sort of on the leading edge there. I also had worked in Australia prior to joining 1832. So I was already closely tied in with a lot of the information flow, and I'm a regular attendee at Diggers and Dealers, for example. So with regard to the North American look at Australian companies, it's certainly increased over the recent years, even probably mostly over the last 12 months, I would say. So we're sort of long time tenured investors in Australia, but I think there is certainly a lot more attention being paid to Australian companies in North America. But the Australian market and the Canadian markets, to some degree, they're both parochial, and there's always barriers.
Yep, I'm hearing you there. Look, obvious question here, but what brings you to Australia, and how do you manage those investments from the other side of the world?
Well, as I alluded to, I'm fairly closely tied in with a lot of the information flow in Australia. I've always been attracted to Australia because I think globally, first of all, as far as jurisdictions for mining goes, Canada and Australia are global leaders in terms of ease of doing business. What I find about Australia is geologically, it's in a very safe jurisdiction and not as well combed over as, say, other well-known mining camps around the world, such as Nevada. So there's always an opportunity to find things. Western Australia in particular, there's not a lot of cover. There's Victoria's, there's a little bit more cover there, but there's still an ease of doing exploration there most of the year.
Thanks. Look, Canadian companies have done nicely in Victoria lately with Kirkland Lake. How much of an influence is Kirkland Lake's success in guiding your investing in Australia in general and Victoria in particular?
Well, I think certainly their success at Fosterville's been around for many years, but their success there of really honing in on the high grade zone has really brought a lot of notoriety to the district. And of course, there's quite a number of companies active in the area, a combination, mostly Australian companies, the odd Canadian company dotted in there as well. And geologically, some of them seem to be a little bit more advanced than others in terms of their targeting. But as Karina pointed out, there's no guarantee of success, but it is certainly geologically very, very intriguing district. Victoria is obviously a lot different than, say, Western Australia. You got a lot more high grade, a little bit more variability and nuggetiness to the ore bodies. So it is something that requires a little bit more thought, but some of the drill intercepts that come out of Victoria are just absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, drill intercepts seem to be market-moving events just at the moment. And also, you mentioned a couple of times there those lovely words, high grade. How important is high grade to attracting investors to Victoria?
I think there's a different investors. There's obviously a lot of investors that invest in low-grade deposits. However, I've been doing this for over 20 years, and I find that there's the old adage, grade is king. So not that it's the be-all and end-all, but certainly there's a lot more interest or safety or in terms of investing. Essentially, you have to find a lot less tons to find a large deposit. The high-grade underground nature of Victorian deposits can lend itself to having very, very attractive economics, such as the Fosterville mine. I think the cash costs at Fosterville are phenomenally low.
Yeah, yeah. Look, do North American gold investors look for different things when valuing gold companies? I mean, in Australia, we're more interested in early cash flow, but North American investors seem to prefer more drilled up ounces in the ground.
That's a good question. This is something that we've always contemplated for decades. Why do Australian companies trade at different levels of valuation than North Americans? I think that, yes, in general, maybe it might start out with the fact the Australian market it's a bit of a smaller market. The pension funds, mutual fund business there isn't as well developed. You don't necessarily get North American funds investing in Australia, so there might be a bit of a natural discount that occurs. I find even within Australia, not relevant to this conversation, but when you get Australian companies working offshore, whether it be in West Africa or Canada, they even get a discount within the Australian market. So it really depends what you're looking at. Certainly, a lot of North American stocks are news flow driven. When you're looking at producers, I find that Australian companies or the Australian analysts are very NAV driven, very driven off of maybe a long-term gold price, often a little lower than the spot price for conservatism, and then a discount rate applied. North American companies, on the other hand, can actually trade at significant premiums to that. And one theory would be that these companies can trade off of option value pricing. In other words, what is a gold mine? A gold mine is not just a stream of future cash flows. It is essentially buying options in the gold market, because you're buying European gold options. As the gold is being mined, you're constantly exercising those European call options. And as you know, in option valuation, longer dated options are worth more than shorter dated options. So if you have a mine with a long mine life, you can actually have a very large premium that the market will pay.
That's a very interesting point, actually, and something we don't think about down here that much. Look, just to round it off, can you tell us a bit about 1832 and how much you guys manage?
Sure. 1832 is a wholly owned asset management arm of the Bank of Nova Scotia, or Scotiabank here in Canada, which is one of the largest chartered banks here in Canada. The assets under management effectively were a combination of Scotiabank having their own asset management business a number of years ago and merging it with a few others. So in total, I believe it's over 160 billion of assets under management. What is dedicated to the gold space in specific gold funds is circa $1 billion Canadian, which is similar to about $1 billion Australian, of course. And some of our other broader mandates, other fund managers will have some, from time to time, different allocations to gold. So we obviously assist the greater team with their picks in the gold space.
Great, Robert. Look, thank you very much. But stick around, will you? Because we've got some Q&A a bit later. Thank you so much for that.
Yes, sir.
Okay, our next speaker coming up is Cameron Cairns, Manager, Minerals Geoscience at Geological Survey of Victoria and a great friend of the Melbourne Mining Club. Cameron is well known to many of us as also a great supporter of the work of the GSV. Today, Cameron will give us a sketch of mineral resource strategy. Cameron, thanks for joining 5 at 5 today.
Thanks, Richard. Thanks for you and the team for having me. So I'm just going to jump straight in here. Quite timely with the launch of the Victorian government's mineral strategy in 2018, with the heightened amount of activity that we see currently in minerals exploration and development in Victoria. So the strategy itself is broken up into 5 key areas, and the Geological Survey helps deliver on Action Area 2, which is advancing the geoscience. But I suppose the underlying theme to Victorian Government mineral strategy is responsible minerals exploration and development, and that's seeded throughout those 5 action areas. Next slide, thank you. So, as Karina alluded to before, very, very healthy exploration activity in Victoria at present. It's not only increasing expenditure, but it's the recent increase in drill holes and the increase in drill holes, particularly on exploration licences, which is a pretty good sign in itself. Just note that the 2019 or the Australian financial year 2019-2020 data, we haven't seen the last quarter yet, so we're hoping for a bit of a tick there, but a pretty positive increase there. The blue line there represents the percentage of Australian expenditure the Victorian is experiencing, and I suppose what supports that, I haven't got this slide with me today, but is the average quarterly mineral exploration growth in Victoria has actually outperformed the national average over the past 18 months or so. So drilling, I mean, there was almost 4,000 drill holes completed in financial year 2019, and when the final numbers fall, we're expecting that there'll be a bit of an increase again, even with the COVID overlay. But at the end of the day, and again, as Karina touched on before, just a lot of drill meters going into the ground, and arguably it's the only way we're going to make discoveries. Next slide, please. So Victoria itself, I mean, pre-competitive data is highly sought after, but I really think that pre-competitive knowledge is something that can sometimes be overlooked. We're not a large team, the survey or the minerals component of the survey itself, but we do have a healthy cross-section of skills and experience, and we're always happy to talk rocks to anyone who wants to come and see us. So admittedly, I'm actually a little surprised coming from industry myself and joining the survey a few years ago that we and getting to know the resources that we have available, that we actually don't receive more inquiries from industry. But with the number of newcomers, recent newcomers to Victoria, maybe that will change. We've got about 250,000 files available for access, and we continue to add this to this all the time. We're seeing a lot of activity around old workings at present, and I suppose the old adage that the best place to search for gold is in the shadow of the head frame. But what some people may not realise is we have an incredible library of historical mine plans, which a lot of them date back to 100 years ago and pre-technology. So the people making those plans at the time had very, very insightful observations and documented them very well, and an absolute wealth of knowledge in there. The sheer volume and the various sources and the data types mean there can be some challenges sometimes retrieving some of our data sets and documents, but look, we're here to help. So please, if you're interested, get in contact with us. Victoria has some of the highest quality statewide pre-competitive geophysical data coverage in Australia, and Australia, as many people would know, has an international reputation for these types of data sets. So we're really confident that what we've got on offer, and again, we're looking to add to all the time, is fit for purpose in terms of getting in on the ground initially. We've got a great resource of physical pre-competitive data in the form of drill core and cuttings at the Drill Core Library, which is just 40 minutes outside of Melbourne. Currently houses about 1.5 million metres of drill core, and it's free to access and potentially sample as well. So another great resource. There's a number of links here. I believe the slides will be distributed later, and they'll definitely be put up on our website. That will take you through to some recent applied geoscience research that ourselves and co-workers have undertaken, and we'll probably hear a little bit about, hopefully hear a little bit of that through Chris's presentation in a bit, and in the work we recently did in Western Victoria, which changed the geological thinking there. So I suppose the Geological Survey of Victoria, it undertakes these large-scale programs, which they don't directly detect mineral deposits. However, generating that deeper understanding of the big picture geological framework has the potential to generate regional and district scale opportunities, focus exploration targeting, and as part of that reduced exploration risk. So Gold Undercover, initiative which is a few years old but still very, very relevant today, was a great example of this. And as just previously mentioned, our more recent work with Geoscience Australia on the Stavely project. So,
Chris, I might stop you there. That's sensational. Yep. That, and you know, I'm sure that we're going to get quite a few questions, both online and offline, on that, mate. And thank you so much for that description there, mate. And if you've got a question, please type it in there. Thank you, Chris. And now it's a great pleasure to cross the Pacific again to hear from Bryan Slusarchuk, who's just outside Vancouver, as it seems there. He's CEO of one of the newest listed companies joining the Victorian gold rush. Bryan, you and Rex Motten have grabbed an amazing first mover advantage in listing Fosterville South on the TSX and have attracted a huge following. It's a pleasure to have you here today. And what can you tell us about Fosterville South?
Richard, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to talk to people not only about Fosterville South, but about Victoria in general. So I very much appreciate this opportunity. We do have, as you mentioned, a first mover advantage. And what's very interesting is that Fosterville South is a new story for many people, and it's a newly listed company, but it has been years in the making. Rex Motten is a local geologist. His home is approximately 30 minutes from Kirkland Lake's Fosterville operation. And Rex, over a number of decades, has been intimately involved in the Victoria exploration scene. He's an international geologist, but always had an eye on his own backyard. In 2015, 2016, Rex started the process of assembling the 3,700 square kilometer land package that constitutes our tenements today. So again, a new story for the market, but years in the making. We were fortunate, as this first slide mentions, to attract some well-known investors. Eric Sprott, who's the former chairman of Kirkland Lake, has been an investor of Fosterville South since we were a private company. Ross Beatty has been an investor in Fosterville South since we were a private company. So we've had some very good backing from people that have not only had success globally in the gold exploration business, but really specifically in this area. I was a founder of K92 Mining, which some of you may follow, and I really had a fortunate role with K92 as a co-founder and president. I got to run around the world and talk about what a great situation it was, while John Lewins, who is the CEO of K92, was doing the hard work on the ground building that company. I'm in a very similar situation here. It's Rex that is driving shareholder value here at Fosterville South, and I just get to go out and talk to people within the capital markets about what we're doing. What we're trying to do, we've assembled a premier land package in what's arguably the most important area in the world for high-grade gold exploration. What we're trying to do is leverage that early mover, first mover advantage in two ways. Number one, be busy on the ground creating value through the drill bit. We've put out some spectacular early high-grade drill results from our drilling at our Golden Mountain project. But number two, we're also trying to leverage that first mover, early mover advantage and status corporately. And when I say that, I refer to our Leviathan Gold spinout. We're spinning out two assets called Avoca and Timor into a new company called Leviathan Gold. Leviathan Gold will come to trade publicly on the TSX Venture. And via the spinout maneuver, every shareholder of Fosterville South will receive 1 share of Leviathan Gold for every share of Fosterville South that they own at a soon to be announced effective date. So we're doing two things. One, we're trying to drive value in the ground, and we're doing that very successfully right now via a 2 drill rig program at Golden Mountain that is in the midst of accelerating based on what we're seeing in the core. And number two, we're trying to take advantage of the fact that we have this huge 3,700 square kilometer land package assembled over a multi-year period through corporate transactions such as Leviathan. And the Leviathan gold spinout may not be the last spinout that we do, again, taking advantage of that early mover, first mover status. We're very well funded. We have close to $24 million Canadian right now in cash. We're just north of 40 million on a fully diluted basis, Canadian cash. So we're in a very good position to drill aggressively, drill on multiple projects. Within that big land package, we have 600 square kilometers contiguous with and directly south of Kirkland Lakes, Fosterville tenements. I think that was one of the things that attracted Eric Sprott and Ross Beatty in the first place to become major shareholders. We've got a team that has a track record of wealth creation in the space, and we're moving forward aggressively on the ground. And with that, if people want to learn a little bit more about Fosterville South, you can visit our website, of course, fostervillesouth.com. We trade as FSX on the TSX Venture. We also trade on the OTC and in Germany. So the company is accessible to institutional and retail investors. And one thing that I would say, just from a general market perspective, is that a couple of years ago when we were out marketing various situations, K92 mining included, it was all about getting to the specialist investors, the precious metals funds, brilliant guys like Robert Cohen who are on the call. The list was quite small. What we're starting to see now is nibbling from generalists. So I think this is just an incredible space to be in. And we're taking advantage of the fact that Rex was early in this modern day gold rush in Victoria and started to put together this land package 5 years ago.
Hey, Bryan, there's no doubt there that early mover advantage and the sort of real estate you picked up there is quite a compelling package. Thank you again for joining us all the way from Vancouver there. But hang on the line there. We may well have a question or two for you a bit later. Thanks once again. Our next panelist is the driving force behind a game changer for mining in Victoria. Chris Cairns founded Stavely Minerals and set out to learn more about an old CRA project called Thursday's Gossan in the farmland just the other side of Lake Bolac. Google map it, you'll find it. It's very small. He had a low-grade copper resource, but where did the copper come from? Chris, welcome to the panel.
Thank you, Richard, and thank you to Mines and Money for the 5 at 5 opportunity. Can we get my slides up? Very good. So, as mentioned, we're about 3 hours drive west of Melbourne. It's broadacre cropping in that area. There's no sort of hobby farms or weekenders, anything like that. It's an industrial scale agriculture. We did putt around this thing for quite some time. It was, as Karina mentioned, known for some decades. It was discovered initially as a copper prospect in the early 70s, but really probably not recognized as a porphyry type system until the early 90s, when North Limited, flush from their success at North Parks, picked up the project, drilled a few holes, and there was a succession of well-credentialed explorers came through the project, including CRA and then Rio Tinto in a reincarnation, Newcrest, North Limited, etc., up until Beaconsfield ultimately owned it. And it was really dealt with as a traditional porphyry type system. And I think the best North Limited intercept in the system was 229 meters at 0.22% copper. But it did have a chalcite blanket on top. And when I went for a site visit, Beaconsfield, the previous owner, had drilled accidentally, in the search for nickel sulfides, a hole through an ultramafic contact and hit what we now call the Cayley lode, which we named after Ross Cayley, the Geological Survey of Victoria geologist, who, with the team at GSA and GSV, they had developed this Stavely arc continental margin model and the fertility for porphyry type systems in this part of Victoria. But as we went through our programs, the search for the deeper porphyry wasn't as successful as we had initially hoped, but we did have periodic intercepts of high grade in structurally controlled positions. And this led to one of our consultants, Scott Halley, suggesting that in fact we were dealing with a magma or a Butte, Montana type system. And so this is the model that we're using, and it's performing very, very well. The magma system was mined for 86 years before BHP acquired the Magma Copper Company. They had an integrated operation, the mine and a smelter. BHP then realized the mine was losing money, but the smelter was highly efficient. So they closed the mine, they started smelting other people's ore and spun that smelting unit off, but retained the mining tenements, and then allowed Rio Tinto to come in on an exploration joint venture, and they're widely credited with the discovery holes that were drilled into the resolution porphyry sitting underneath that magma vein system. And so really that's very much what we see in this Thursday's Gossan system, and really it was that realization, as Richard mentioned, just looking at things from a different perspective and going after the structurally controlled high grade mineralization that has really changed the story for us. We had the discovery hole, hole 50, 32 meters at almost 6% copper, a gram gold, and 2 ounces silver from 32 meters depth. So we've been drilling that out extensively for the past 9 months or so. We have it defined over 1.5 kilometers strike extent, and we've got drill intercepts into 3 separate structures down to depths of almost 1 kilometer. But these systems are relatively well documented and well understood. They're zoned in terms of sulfide species. We see that. They're mineralized on multiple structures, and they're vertically and laterally extensive. And that there's a porphyry at depth driving these systems. Next slide, please. So this is what we've seen so far in cross-section, the discovery hole up the top there on what we call the ultramafic contact fault, 32 meters at almost 6% copper. Underneath a little offsetting low angle structure, we've also got mineralization, so we're relatively confident that that surface will be mineralized to depths approaching 1 kilometer. On what we call the copper lode splay structure, a little bit to the west, we've got a couple of intercepts in there, 6 meters at 6.7% copper from about 540 meters depth. And then hole 44 that was drilled from right to left came through that structure and hit 10 meters at 2.5% copper, 0.3 grams gold, and then continued through into what we call the north-south structure and hit that 40 meters at 1.6% copper and 0.3 grams gold. It was such a deep hole, it went to about 1,200 meters that we decided we'd maximize the value in that hole. We pulled it back out to about 500 meters, set a wedge, and came at that structure again and got another intercept of 18 meters at 3.6% copper and 0.3 grams gold. So that's a significant depth. And so hence our confidence that this system on multiple structures will be mineralized at significant depth. Next slide. So we've got it over 1 kilometer depth. Our current focus is to complete a shallow resource drill out. As mentioned, we've got that resource over 1.5 kilometers of strike, but we're just drilling out in a resource sense what people would consider would be reasonably available for open pit mining down to 200 meters. We then intend on extending that mineralization on that ultramafic contact fault structure, the Cayley lode, down to depth, probably not at a high density resource drilling type spacing, but certainly to give us confidence that mineralization continues and that people can then see a decline coming off an open pit and spiraling between the ultramafic contact fault and the copper lode splay and accessing both mineralized surfaces from the same underground infrastructure, keeping in mind that the vertical rate of advance for a typical underground mine is about 50 or 60 meters vertically per year. If we can demonstrate that we've got in excess of a kilometer's depth on these two surfaces, we're talking about a multi-decade underground mine life for the phase 2 development, the phase 1 being the open pit. So we're looking at a very prolific set of structures. Of course, the porphyry is still out there. We've done some seismic earlier this year. We've got targets that we intend to start to drill in November. And in doing so, we'll be coming straight across that stratigraphy and likely to pick up additional mineralized subvertical structures that we've also identified in that seismic. So we've just, again, as Karina mentioned, we've done a big capital raising. So we've got in excess of $30 million under our belt. And we're well funded into a very massive drill program as we come out of winter and we can get on the ground with initially 4 diamond rigs and then upgrading the 6th when we drill those deeper targets for the porphyry in November. So it's going to be an exciting time in Western Victoria for us.
Oh, that's it certainly is there, Chris, and congrats. You certainly have changed the way Victorians think about their mining. Well, don't go away because we've got one more speaker and then we've got some questions to come in now. Thank you very much, Chris. Okay, so I'm now delighted to introduce Ian Hann, who, you know, he must have the best job in the gold mining world. You know, he's general manager of the Fosterville gold mine, which is the 1st or 2nd richest gold mine in the world at the moment, and he's only an hour and a bit up the road from Melbourne. Ian, welcome and congrats on the new role. What can you tell us today about Fosterville?
Yeah, thanks, Richard. Look, I must admit, when someone asked me to tell the story of Fosterville in 5 minutes and 3 slides, I had to think about it a little bit. So I've just put forward a couple of thoughts here that we can talk at. The first one, really, if there's one word that sums up this site, it's perseverance. It also happens to be the name of the company that built Fosterville as it stands at the moment as a modern day operation. Well named. The photo itself, it's all about teamwork. So you know, in relation to Victorian gold, what I can tell you from our experience, perseverance, you just got to have it. For a long time, we were a battling mine in the bush outside of Bendigo, 100,000 ounces a year, around about that. And then we stayed in the game. And I literally mean what it says at the bottom there. It's finding Swan wasn't our greatest achievement. It was literally staying in the game long enough to find it, because I'm a massive believer in Central Victoria. There's more out there, but we just got to find it. And to do that, we've got to be in business. Next slide. The Swan. Many I suppose metaphors come to mind. The Swan Lode is, as it's named, is truly an amazing. It's just an amazing thing to behold, and there's been a number of people lucky enough to come to site, go underground and have a look, and I've not yet met a person who hasn't come back with gold fever. There's a small photo there. That rock's about the size of my fist, and that is typical of some of the ground that we find in the Swan Lode. So it's just an amazing physical thing. We were for a long time unloved, and I suppose our story is the story of Victorian gold. For a long time, Victorian gold was unloved, but things change. There is no doubt about that fact. That things do change. So our ugly duckling became the beautiful swan, so to speak. The photo is intended, the black swan. I actually raised this with some people in Canada and said, oh, it's a bit of a black swan event. And I got asked as what that really meant. So I thought I'd put a bit of a definition in there. It did come as a bit of a surprise. We were looking hard, but you never expect to find what we did in true honesty. And it is a quantum shift. I must admit, part of our journey involved going from a 5-ish gram sulfide ore body mine, 100,000 ounces a year, just doing it hard. All of a sudden, you start getting drill intercepts that are in the hundreds, a few in the thousands, gram per tonne. At what stage do you truly believe that you're going to go from a 5-gram sulfide ore body to one of the richest mines in the world. You know, I had a number of discussions, and I won't mention a name, but there's a self-made billionaire involved in our company previously who put his hand on my shoulder at one stage and said, "My friend, I think you're being a little conservative in how you're estimating what's down there." And possibly we were, because 2 ounce plus and 3 ounce plus, and you know, at times we mine 5 ounce to the ton stopes underground. You know, who would have thought? So I truly believe in Central Victoria as a place to be. I just don't know of another place where you can find what we have. And we've got a number of lodes at the moment in the early stages, and who knows what they'll grow into. One of them we have named Signet, obviously we're hoping. Last slide, I suppose, and then questions after that. You have to believe it's there, and I've got to give credit to a number of Canadian companies that have been the owner of us over the journey, and each one's played its own role. The Kirkland Lake symbol that was designed by a secretary, a personal assistant over in Toronto, and it symbolises gold coming off a drill bit. It is in the DNA of this company to find the stuff, and I'd encourage everyone that, you know, the only way to find what we have found, and I do believe there's more out there. You've got to be drilling holes, and we drill a lot. There's no doubt about it. Part of the community. Anyone who thinks that, especially in Central Victoria, given that, you know, it's a highly densely populated state, it is not the Eastern Goldfields of Western Australia or Western Queensland. We are genuinely part of the community and have been very fortunate. We've had a solid team of people here over a long period of time, building up our credentials in this area. You know, I can only encourage every other participant in the Victorian gold game to get on board the community, because without it, you know, we are nothing, and we're all in this together as an industry. Innovation, the last point. We've been so fortunate at Fosterville that we have a never-ending, almost conveyor belt of really talented people coming through here who are trying to innovate and make it better. We've done some metallurgical things on site, you know, some of which has been patented and is now sold worldwide through Autotech. We've got people on site doing all sorts of really clever stuff, and I suppose the picture there shows where we're headed. We'll have a fully Wi-Fi'd underground operation inside the next 12 months, and our mines have to go smart. You know, the history of Victorian mines, it's down there, it's going to be deep, it's going to be underground, and you have to be a smart miner to continue to pay the bills, and that for us is part of the challenge, and something that to this date we've been really successful with. But before I close, I'd make a point. There's been, you know, success has a lot of fathers, and there's no doubt that there's a number of people over the journey, and every company's contributed. I would make special mention in the early days of John Quinn and Graham Sloan. Some people on this call may know them. I think they built Fosterville out of sheer will. You know, it's unbelievable what they achieved in the early 2000s. Bryan Phillips, Dave Ransom, I would shout out to them. Some people may know those names. They literally helped keep the gates open here at Fosterville when we were just a battling business. You know, I once had the pleasure of presenting a budget to a very large man, CEO of our company, a big bear of a man, and after 4 hours of presenting our budget for the next year, he stood up and promptly pushed the budget papers back towards me and said, "That's well and good, but that's not a business." So you know, we go through the hard times, and I can only encourage everyone, persevere. It is out there. There's more and more and more. I genuinely think Central Victoria, it has been and will be again one of the great gold districts of the world. There's no doubt in my mind. Thanks,
Ian, thank you very much for that presentation today, mate. And what a wonderful mine that is, and a wonderful opportunity. Now, just hang around there, because Shireen, what have we got in terms of questions there? Because if not, I've got a few up my sleeve.
Yeah, sure. Joe Kakusa, you've got a quick question for Robert Cohen from 1832.
I do have, thank you, Shireen. Robert, I recently completed a study of the top 150 companies on their TSX and ASX, and excluding the top 6 as the majors, I found that the remaining 144 companies on average on the TSX had a higher, 73% higher market cap than the Australian ASX companies. Would your options theory explain this?
It would only explain it partially for producers, but I think as of late, you know, like the comparable Australian companies to North American peers would be the likes of the Northern Stars and the Evolutions and the larger, sorry if I'm leaving anyone out, you know, Saracens of the world. I think they're starting to really catch up to the North Americans. So, you know, I think the first time I'm seeing that gap closing in a little bit.
Thank you.
We have a question also, I guess this is for both Kirkland and those around Kirkland. Has Kirkland discovered a geological signature that might lead to new discoveries elsewhere in Victoria?
Yeah, good question there, Ian. How does that sit with you?
The theories that are bound in Victoria as to how we've actually, you know, this swan lode's evolved, still being developed, and there's many. What I can tell you is we did some 3D seismic surveying on site and in the last 12 months. It's likely the most comprehensive set of data that's ever been collected in one spot. And I'll stand corrected after the show if anyone's got any other data on that. But we are very confident that is going to produce a number of targets for us within our existing mining lease. And for those that don't know, our existing mining lease is only maybe 10 kilometres long, about 1.5 kilometres wide. So it's a small postage stamp, but we think it's really prospective.
Thanks, Ian. We've got a question also from Mark Bennett. Mark, you're on unmute now.
I guess I'd like to ask Cameron this question, but I don't necessarily want to put Cameron on the spot. It's about the Victorian tender release and the deferred date. Now, I know Victoria has a lot of bigger problems to worry about right now, and I know that only too well because I've just done 130 days isolation here. But what worries me is the deferral of the outcome of the tender process until next year sometime, plus the then lead time to actually get an exploration licence granted. We could be looking at the best part of 2 years before that happens. And the concern is that the gold bubble may be over by then. And a lot of the attraction to Victoria at the moment is because of Fosterville, which is great, but these deposits, despite being bonanzas, have a very finite life. So Victoria may not be perceived to be as popular in 2 years' time as it might be right now. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, it'd be great to see those licenses out as soon as possible. So obviously the information's on there. The survey's removed from any evaluation process and the like. It is being run out of our department because ultimately we just want people on the ground turning. So one thing we have seen is obviously a lot of ground uptake elsewhere in the state, and a lot of activity on that, which has been really good. So I suppose just watch this space. I mean, it'd be nice to think that it could be out there sooner, but as mentioned before, unfortunately, I'm a bit removed from that process.
I believe that Pat, Faye and Lucy also had questions for you, Cameron. You might want to respond to them on the chat also around the geological survey and the approvals. But for Bryan and Chris, a question that's sort of come through is exploration techniques. Has there been any particular ones that have helped you guys the most? Chris, we'll start with you, or otherwise Bryan.
Yeah, I'm just an absolutely big fan of drilling. I think, particularly if you read any of the stuff from the Newcrest geologists around the discovery of Cadia and Cadia Ridgeway, you got to drill the holes. And so drill the holes, squeeze those holes, get every bit of information that you can out of them, and that gives you the capacity to target better next time if you've missed it. So, yeah, drill the holes, do the work, consult with people who have seen a lot of rocks elsewhere. We use Scott Halley, Greg Corbett, and Paul Ashley. Bring those that wisdom into the team from an early stage. But yeah, for me, if you don't drill, you don't find.
Bryan, do you have any comment on that as well?
Well, I think from our team, Rex Mott or Doug Kerwin would be better positioned to answer that than I. What I would say is we've got 2 drill rigs at Golden Mountain. We're going to increase that drill rig count, likely based on what we're seeing in the core. We've done a fair bit of soils at Lauriston in preparation for drilling there. And Rex has been quite active with the soils geochemistry as a tool.
Okay. We have a question from Hedley Widdop. Hedley?
Thanks, Shireen. Question for Chris Cairns. First of all, Chris, wonderful discovery and congratulations on that. I think what Ian said about perseverance before should be levelled at you guys as well, because you developed a geological model, you evolved it, and it's turned into a discovery. And I think that's a massive success story for Victoria, but primarily for you guys. The porphyry potential remains tantalising. Just a question from me, and perhaps I've got an idea of it, but in layman's terms, how do you vector from your magma-style loads towards a porphyry, and does the existence of these help to give you much of a sense of depth that might exist to a porphyry target? Look, I think it's wonderful if you can drill those out to 1 kilometre, so maybe the porphyry doesn't matter for a while yet, but just wondering how the science works in your mind there.
Yeah, certainly. Look, to our advantage is that the Magma and Butte, Montana systems are very well documented. You know, they were mined for, well, in Butte's case, over 100 years, well studied, well documented in the literature. These systems are zoned, and we believe where we're at near surface in the Cayley lode is the chalcopyrite zone that's in the magma system, and below that we would expect to see the sulfide species change to a bornite dominant zone before then you get into tennantite tetrahedrite and then down into energite as you approach the porphyry. So when we match up where we think we are relative to magma, we're probably a little over 1 kilometre above where the porphyry might sit in that system. And that's very much supported with the petrology that we've done, and as the characteristics of those lodes change with those deeper hits that we've had, we start to see a little bit more energite and collucite. So yes, just a little more than 1 kilometre if we compare on a like-by-like basis, and it's reasonably well understood, so we're pretty confident of that depth.
A quick question for Karina Bader, perhaps, and yourself, Richard Morrow. Have you noticed that there's a change in the demographic of investors? Are trends towards more or less non-Australian investment in Australian projects becoming evident now that the COVID crisis has been going for over 6 months? Is there a difference? What do you think is sort of attributing to the change of investors in Australian and Victoria projects? Karina?
Look, we've got records in our database on the microcap sector going back almost 20 years, and the liquidity in the microcap sector right now is higher than it has ever been on our records. So clearly there's something going on. From where I sit, you're definitely seeing North Americans coming into the Australian market in a larger way than I think they have probably since post-GFC days. But also we are seeing a lot more retail interest, and we do wonder, I've got no evidence to back it up, but we do wonder if the early superannuation withdrawals for our citizens as a result of COVID has enabled retail people to actually directly invest. So we do think that the market at the moment is perhaps less informed than it would normally be because of ASX delaying some of their disclosure requirements for companies during COVID. We don't know whether that will change as the annual reporting season sheds more light and hopefully more guidance to the investors that trade on a normal basis. So I think that there has been a change, but it's very hard to find real statistical data to back that up.
Sure. Richard, do you have a comment on that and also a wrap up?
Yeah, I have I'm seeing a lot of profits recycled into the next investment idea or speculative idea. It's like a pebble in a pond, you know. The the excitement that surrounds Kirkland Lake has created a wave of interest in others in Victoria. So that's a wonderful thing. So look, thanks there, Shireen. And if you, I will wrap it up there if you like. I want to just thank all our panelists that made a big effort, made some great contributions there in their comments. So please, if we can virtually put our hands together and thank Karina Bader of Acorn Capital, Robert Cohen from 1832 all the way over from Toronto, Cameron Cairns locally from the GSV, Bryan Slusarchuk from Fosterville South, great work there, Chris Cairns from Stavely Minerals, and last but not least, Ian Hann from the mighty Kirkland Lake. A big thank you from the Melbourne Mining Club and Mines and Money for your contribution today.
Yeah, thank you so much to everyone, all our attendees. Richard, thank you for hosting. As always, we will make this video live and ready for download as of close of business tomorrow, as well as the presentation. So Bryan, Cameron's, Chris and also Ian's will all be available for viewing. If anyone would like to get in touch with any of our speakers, I know that a number of people are looking to get in touch with Robert and Bryan already. I can definitely put you in touch with those guys. And thank you to everyone for joining us. Obviously, the virtual gold event is on now that you can join, but otherwise, please do join us for the Mines and Money online Global Connect event on the 1st to the 3rd of September that's happening globally. Thank you to the Melbourne Mining Club, Richard Morrow, and all of our speakers, and obviously to all of our guests. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks, Richard.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.